Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene, where empowered by love, we serve our world and are transformed by each other. My name is Bob Sorens. My pronouns are he and him. With me today is our minister, Reverend Jen Youngsun Rue, collaborative pianist, Suzanne Giordano, vocalist, Izzy Cracker and myself, and working behind the scenes, technical communications coordinator, Kat Johnson, along with tech volunteer, Amy Desert. We gather in worship to find meaning and to live more deeply. Worship creates connections within, among, and beyond us, calling us to our better selves, calling us to live with wisdom and compassion. So whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your image of the holy, we're glad you are here. If you are visiting with us today, we'd love to hear from you and invite you to fill out the visitor form as you feel called. The link is being dropped into the chat now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Sauter, and I use the pronouns she and her, and I am your interim director of faith formation with some announcements for you today. Wednesday, December 8th is the last day to pick up your order for baked goods, specialty items, and artisan crafts in the virtual holiday bazaar. We're getting close to the fundraising goal, so stop into the bazaar website and place your orders. Items will be available for pickup on Saturday, December 18th, and more information is coming about music and merriment for that day. In preparation for our Christmas pageant, we are in desperate need of cattle, mice, oxen, twinkling stars, wise people, and more. This is a no rehearsal costume Zoom pageant that will take place at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve. We'll have costumes for you, or you can make your own. All you have to do is don that costume and listen for your obvious cue. Children and adults are invited to participate. See your Wednesday email or Facebook to sign up. We look forward to hearing the traditional story of the birth of Jesus and to the sound of the cattle lowing. We are introducing a new holiday giving program this year, the Giving Tree. This year's beneficiary will be the First Place Family Shelter. First Place gives crucial assistance and support to families with children who are in transition due to homelessness, job loss, health issues, or other critical problems. Many of us fall on hard times, layoffs, family illness, natural disasters, or other life challenges. Families need a place to turn to during times of distress. UUCE will be filling many items that the center is in need of, from diapers to strollers. Please see your weekly email or Facebook to participate by selecting any of the items you will donate. Thank you.
We light the chalice this morning with the words of Robin Wall Kimmerer. Even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you here today. I'm thankful for each and every one of you. Let me call us into worship today with the words of my colleague, Gretchen Haley. Come in, all who long to know how to love this world, how to keep eyes wide open and hands unclenched, arms wide, breathing in and out, because this is a time to practice, because there is still so much good and beauty and joy. But it can be hard to keep telling this tale with all the world's news and the wind and the rain and the trembling. I mean, who wants to love this life anyway, right? Come in, all who teeter on this edge of cynicism, brokenhearted and trying to still remember laughter and kindness and the chance to be alive in these days when so much is at stake. In this place, we remind each other why we persist, why we resist, because we want to give each other courage to take this path that is not always the easy path, to keep practicing this love that cannot and will not let us go and still calls us on. So come, let us worship together. We're in the midst of the Advent season. Our Unitarian Universalist faith grew out of Christian roots, and so it is good and well for us to take those traditions from our religious ancestors and to reinterpret them for our congregation that is full of humanists and pagans and Buddhists and all kinds of Unitarian Universalists. This morning, we light 2 candles on our Advent wreath as we move deeper into this season of light in the midst of darkness. Last week, we lit the first candle for hope. And today, we'll light the second candle for peace. We give thanks to those who witness for a world made whole with its people united in peace. I invite you now into a time of guided meditation. Allow yourself to sit quietly and at ease. Allow your body to be relaxed and open. Your breathing natural, your heart easy. Begin by acknowledging all the ways that you have cared for yourself this last week. What kindness have you shown to your own self? And now let yourself remember all that has supported you in this care. With gratitude, I remember the people, the animals, and the plants, all the creatures of the sea and air, water, fire, earth, all whose joyful exertion blesses my life every day. With gratitude, I remember the care and the labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before me. Just as we are grateful for our blessings, so can we be grateful for the blessings that others enjoy. Picture someone that you care about very, very much. Picture them and feel the natural joy you have for their well-being, for their happiness, and for their success. With each breath, offer them your gratitude and your heartfelt wishes for their joy. When you are ready, you can extend this practice to include neutral people, difficult people, and even those you consider enemies, until you are able to extend sympathetic joy to all beings everywhere. practice dwelling in joy until the deliberate effort of practice just drops away and the intentions of joy blend into the natural joy that comes from your own wise heart. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well.
The reading this morning is from Anne Sexton, who wrote, "Welcome Morning. There is joy in all, in the hair I brush every morning, in the cannon towel newly washed that I rub my body with each morning, in the chapel of eggs I cook each morning, in the outcry from the kettle that heats my coffee each morning, in the spoon and the chair that cry, 'Hello there, Anne,' each morning, in the Godhead of the table that I set my silver plate cup upon each morning. All this is God, right here in my pea greenhouse each morning, and I mean, though often forget, to give thanks, to faint down by the kitchen table in a prayer of rejoicing, as the holy birds at the kitchen window peck into their marriage of seeds. So while I think of it, let me paint a thank you on my palm for this God, this laughter of this morning, lest it go unspoken. The joy that isn't shared, I've heard, dies young."
The year before I entered seminary, I spent that year in Seoul, South Korea, and studied at a Zen community there. The Zen master was a really good teacher, respected and admired, but he never smiled, never showed much emotion. On my last day there, I went to him and presented him with a gift and told him how much I really appreciated the community, and I was so thankful for all of his teachings. Without a word, he just nodded at me, received my gift, and then walked away. I assumed this was the way of Zen, kind of somber and serious path. But I did learn that his way was not necessarily the way. A prominent German Buddhist monk once said, "Life, though full of woe, holds also sources of happiness and joy. Let us teach people to seek and to find real joy within themselves and to rejoice in the joy of others." Noble and sublime joy is not foreign to the teachings of the enlightened one. Wrongly, the Buddha's teaching is sometimes considered to be a doctrine diffusing melancholy. Far from it. Dharma leads step by step to an even purer and loftier happiness. I do hope that many of you are finding joy in these days and in your life. But if you're not, I want to reassure you that you are not alone. Last week, I went to a gathering of UU clergy colleagues, and we were sitting around talking about December's spiritual theme, opening to joy. And lots of us were struggling to find a connection to our own joyfulness. Ministry during the COVID times has left many of us feeling off balance and uncertain. All the more important then, we decided to practice this monthly practice of opening to joy. Because joy is so much more than just a pleasant feeling. Joy is so much deeper than just a feeling of happiness. It's an essential ingredient for a vital life and for a life engaged in the work of collective liberation. So this morning, I want to talk about 3 kinds of joy: conditional joy, unconditional joy, and sympathetic joy. Conditional joy is what Anne Sexton was talking about in that poem. It's how she feels when she grabs a fresh, clean towel. It's how she feels when she sees that pile of eggs on her plate and the sound of the kettle and seeing the birds outside the window, seeing the silverware laid out on her table. She is so grateful for all of these things. They bring her joy. This kind of joy lasts for as long as that condition remains, right? And then it fades away. We're joyful as long as certain people are near us whom we love. Or we're joyful when the weather is just so. We're joyful when we're flush with cash or we possess certain objects that spark joy. Buddhism teaches us that when we become attached to those conditions and start clinging to it and yearn for it, then that's when we suffer, because inevitably it all goes away, right? That's the second of the 4 noble truths. The first of the noble truths is that suffering just is. I mean, it's just part of our human condition, right? And then the second noble truth explains the reason that we suffer is because we get so attached to those things and we cling to them, we cling to people, we cling to things, we cling to conditions, but of course, none of that ever stays permanently. Unconditional joy, on the other hand, is a joy that is ever present within us, because it's the kind of joy that is not evoked by external conditions, an external event or a situation. We could call it inner joy. Not that it's always easily accessible, but it's there all the time, available to us as we practice opening to joy. The practice invites us to be aware of our minds and to choose to reflect on gratitude and whatever lifts our hearts, rather than feeding the unwholesome mental states. So I had a really profound experience of unconditional joy several years ago when I was backpacking through Western North Carolina. There were 10 of us in this group, and we were hiking through the rocky trails of Pisgah National Forest. It was my 45th birthday, and it was a gift that I gave to myself, and it was a challenge as well. I wasn't the oldest in the group, but I was definitely the most out of shape. We each carried about 70 pounds of gear on our backs, and we walked up, 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 and down, 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 every day for 8 days. In the middle of that week, in the middle of October, it started to rain. And not just light showers, but it was a hard driving rain every day for the rest of that week. One afternoon, the group was unusually quiet as we hiked along a ridge. My back hurt, my feet hurt, I was wet and just questioning this whole venture. What was I doing there? I was way too old for this. The terrain had been exactly the same for hours. Gray sky, gray rocks, gray trees. And as I was walking along, my thoughts turned to my trail mates. There were people from all over the country. An ER nurse from Chico, California, a policeman from Indiana, an artist, a stay-at-home mom, a banker, a college professor. Each night around the campfire, we had been sharing stories of our struggles, and the stories were like the ones that you would hear from anyone in their 40s and 50s, questioning our purpose in life, battling chronic disease, worrying about our children and our parents, struggling with the aftermath of divorce and death. What was stunning to me is how quickly a group of strangers were willing to reveal the most intimate parts of their lives. I felt such appreciation and affection for them. And so my head was lowered to keep the rain off my face, and I just watched the uneven path in front of me. And that in one moment, I just looked up and took a breath, and all of a sudden, I felt this surge of energy rising through my heart and up into the sky and opening. Although nothing had changed, the weather was just as gloomy, everything was just as gray, my feet still hurt, my back still hurt, and yet the world in front of me lit up, sparkling with wetness. All the colors became more vivid. It was joy, strong and without reason. At that moment, there was nothing in the world I wanted to possess, nothing I was trying to run away from or run toward. I had caught this tiny flash of the essential reality of life, that every moment is perfect. Every moment is that ripe strawberry. And the reason we can't see it is because we seem to be always yearning for something better or different or more, when everything we need is really right here with us. Buddhism offers a practice of awakening to that single truth. Buddha means the awakened one. And in the West, we celebrate the awakening, the moment of awakening, on December the 8th. It's called Bodhi Day. Now, before the Buddha was the Buddha, he was Siddhartha Gautama, and he was a prince whose father wanted to protect him from all of the unpleasant realities of the world. And so for most of his life, the prince lived behind the walls of a palace and knew nothing of sickness or death or suffering. But one day, Siddhartha decided that he needed to see what was on the other side of that wall. And so he climbed out and walked among the suffering people. He was shocked to see the level of suffering. For years, he studied under one master after another, barely eating, depriving himself of all material comforts, until one day, near death, he sat under a large tree, which is now called the Bodhi tree, vowing not to move until he had figured out how to eliminate all suffering. We're not quite sure how long he sat there, but he sat there a good long time, and when he awoke, he really awoke. He was fully enlightened. He immediately started to teach about how to move from delusion to reality, how to move from suffering to liberation by taking the middle path. And one of the things that he taught was mudita. This is the third kind of joy, sympathetic joy. Mudita is the Pali word for this kind of joy. It's the opposite of schadenfreude, right? When you get this weird pleasure from seeing other people suffering. So it's the opposite of that. Mudita is rejoicing in the happiness of others and sincerely wanting others to be well and awakened. Now, when you have great love for a person, it's easy to rejoice with them, right? Their successes are your successes. When your child does well on an exam, you are happy, just as joyful. When a close friend gets that job that they've been wanting and hoping for, you feel an incredible amount of joy for them. When your partner comes in and tells you about the fact that they've had a great day, no matter what kind of day you've been through, you can share in their delight. Mudita. This practice becomes a little more challenging, though, when you bring to mind people who are not so close. Acquaintances, strangers, maybe even people in your family that you haven't talked to for a long time. People that you're in conflict with, maybe they are members of this community. Maybe they're friends you've lost touch with, maybe people that you feel negatively toward. That's when the practice kicks in. It's written that the Buddha taught mudita to his son, Rahula, and that was part of a lesson of the 4 immeasurables. Rahula, the Buddha said, Rahula, practice loving kindness so that you may overcome anger. Rahula, practice compassion to overcome cruelty. Practice non-attachment or equanimity to overcome prejudice. And Rahula, make sure to practice sympathetic joy to overcome hatred. These are the 4 immeasurables that the Buddha taught, asking us to practice so that we could become a refreshing source of vitality and happiness for others. Now, I'm guessing that some of you may be wondering, how is joy even possible these days when so much has been destroyed, when so much is at risk, when so many people are hurting? How can we even consider opening to joy when all around us, people and other living beings are dying too soon because of our neglect and our greed and our apathy? How can we even consider joy at a time like this? We cannot afford not to practice joy at a time like this. We practice opening to joy not because we're just seeking some sort of personal pleasure. We are practicing joy as a religious community so that we can become a source of vitality for others. Nowhere is this more important than in our work of collective liberation, justice-making, and activism. As you all know very well, the work of tikkun olam, repairing the world, can be exhausting and relentless and grueling. The fights are long, and often we don't see results for years and years, if ever. Chronic stress and long periods of negative emotional states put us at risk of burnout and despair. So practicing joy creates this kind of spaciousness inside of us, creates a spaciousness in our minds that allows us to hold suffering and allows us to do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm, that allows us to hold the suffering of others and be compassionate with them without collapsing into our own helplessness and despair. That's so important. The Black feminists are great teachers of this principle, following Audre Lorde and repeating the phrase of the poet Toy Derricott, who reminds us that joy is an act of resistance. Joy is an act of resistance. Each one of us has the power to relate to the present moment with joy. We have the power to greet each moment reflecting on gratitude. At every moment, we can choose to think about other people without hostility or goodwill, without ill will. We can choose to do something that delights us, even as we face the suffering of the world. We can choose at every moment to shift our language and stop calling our efforts to change the world work. What if instead of calling it social justice work or activist work, what if we called it instead our greatest joy? Let's do that. Let's choose joy over despair, as Robin Wall Kimmerer has chosen to do, not because we have our heads in the sand, not because we're tired of paying attention, but because joy is what the earth and love and life has given us every day. And with deep gratitude, we choose to return this gift. May it be so. Amen.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And now go into your day, go into this brand new week. And if here you have found freedom, take it with you into this world. And if you have found comfort here, share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. And if you have known love here, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace, my friends. Go in peace.